Council, the city clerk, please take the roll.
Larson.
Here.
Esslinger.
Here.
Flom.
Here.
Bulow.
Here.
Stevenson.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Mughawar.
Here.
7 present.
The invocation will be led by Councilmember Larson, and he'll also lead us in the pledge this evening.
Sure. We ask for guidance tonight as we begin this meeting. May all those who participate in our discussions and our decisions reflect the values that we cherish in this great city. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Larson. Next up, we have introduction of some city staff.
We would have our respective department heads do the introductions. First, Public Works Director Robbie has an introduction to make.
Good evening, Mayor and Common Council members. I'm excited to be here before you again tonight with another staffing announcement. This announcement is a continuation of the organizational improvements that we've been making over in the field operations area of Public Works. Tonight it's my pleasure to introduce you to the newly promoted street manager, Andy Hintz. Andy started with the city of Oshkosh in 2009 as a street division supervisor. Andy came to Oshkosh from the city of Clintonville, where he also worked as a street supervisor. Prior to joining Clintonville, Andy worked for R.J. Immel Excavating out of Greenville. Andy's married with 2 girls and currently lives in Hortonville. When he's not working, he enjoys watching his oldest daughter play on a traveling softball team and going to his youngest daughter's hockey team. When not at a sporting event, Andy enjoys golfing, hunting, and spending time at the cottage on Shawano Lake. And he's excited to take on the challenges of this new position and continue his career with the city of Oshkosh. Andy?
Yes, I just was happy to, James give me the opportunity. I'm in my 16th year here with the city. I've had the fortune of working with a lot of good people. This has been a lot of fun over the last 15, going on to 16 years. I was happy to be chosen for this new role, for this new challenge, if you would. I'm very excited about it. I work with just a lot of good people. I wanted to say thank you again to James, all the people that I work with, and I look forward to the rest of my time, my career here in the city of Oshkosh. So thank you very much.
Congratulations on the new role.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Hello, I am here to introduce Tracy Youngworth. She has accepted the position of Financial Accounting Manager here at the City of Oshkosh. Tracy has already been an essential part of our finance team since November of 2021, previously serving as the staff accountant for the finance department. Before joining the city, Tracy has financial experience in several different organizations. She was a financial analyst at VF Corporation. She also was an accounting team leader and financial analyst at Alta Resources. Before that, she had a variety of roles at Shell in the Philippines, including finance representative, payment specialist, and accounts payable team manager. Tracy's academic credentials are also very impressive. While she was in the Philippines, she earned her bachelor's degree in accounting. She also got her certified CPA, her certified public accountant. She further advanced her education by getting her master's degree at UW Oshkosh. She is married, has 2 kids, 2 stepkids. She likes cooking, reading, and loves get-togethers and hosting parties with all her family and friends. So between her extensive background and work history, we are very excited that she is taking on the role of Financial Accounting Manager here at the city.
It's been a blessing working for the city and being part of a great team and having very supportive leaders. And I'm just grateful to be entrusted with this new role, and I look forward to learning more and contributing more. Thank you.
And Tracy, congratulations to you as well on the new role. Next up is citizen statements to council. I don't have anyone registered, but tonight's a little awkward. For those at home, City Hall, the elevator was still under repair as of Friday afternoon, so we needed to move locations for accessibility reasons. So I just want to make sure if there's anybody here that wants to speak under citizen statements, please just come up to the podium. We'll get you registered. If not, we'll move along. And I know we do have some people registered for something later in the agenda, and we'll call you when that comes up. We shouldn't take too long to get there. I don't see anybody, so we'll move on to consent agenda. I have no one registered to speak to consent either. Again, if anybody is here to speak to a consent agenda item, please come forward now. If not, I'll take a motion and a second to put on the floor.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I know I have two council members who are removing items from consent. Number 12, resolution 24-337, Councilmember Stevenson's removing that one. And then resolution 24-338, that's number 13 on your agenda. Councilmember Nichols is removing that from consent. Anything else, or any comments or discussion? If not, if you'll take the roll on consent, minus 24-337 and minus 24-338.
Larson.
Aye.
Esslinger.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
We'll do resolution 24-337, support and approve of Oshkosh Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board Structure and Redesignation Agreement. Need a motion and a second.
Move it. Second.
Discussion.
My place of employment worked on this. While I had no involvement, I just want to make sure I'm keeping everything above board, so I'll be abstaining from this.
Sounds good. There's no other discussion on it. Just take the roll on 24-337.
Larson.
Aye.
Esslinger.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Present.
Nichols.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 6-1 present.
Next up, resolution 24-338, approve the polling location, date, and times for early absentee voting in the city of Oshkosh for August 13th, 2024, partisan primary, November 5th, 2024, general election, February 18th, 2025, spring primary, and the April 1st, 2025 spring election.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Sure, thank you. So municipalities in Wisconsin are given great latitude on how we conduct early voting. And that's to ensure that all of our residents have a chance to cast their ballot, whether it's absentee by mail, absentee in person, or on election day at the ballot box. The proposed dates and times in this resolution indicate Monday through Friday early voting between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Or 5 p.m. depending on the day of the week. During conversations with the city manager and city clerk yesterday and today, I learned that Oshkosh traditionally looks at our neighbors when we determine these times. We had examples such as Neenah, Fox Crossing, the village of Winneconne, town of Algoma, Black Wolf, Omro, and others to determine those times. And looking at cities beyond our immediate neighbors and those that I consider to be peers in terms of size and population, extended voting times and or Saturday voting are pretty common, including in cities like Appleton, Fond du Lac, La Crosse, Green Bay, Racine, and Kenosha. So with that said, I'd move to table this resolution until the July 9th council meeting with direction to city staff to add at least one day per early voting week of extended hours until at least 7 p.m. And at least one Saturday of early voting per election contemplated in this resolution, which are the next 3 elections.
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment?
I
Yep, sorry. Joe's
There's
first.
no button.
Yeah, sorry, we'll figure it out here.
I guess, so a question for staff, I guess. Do you guys, as far as staffing those extended hours, is that a concern? Or just from a staffing perspective, what do you think about the proposal?
Go ahead.
Okay. Past history is pointed in the direction that it really doesn't pay to have them on Saturday. I believe we did a little bit of research. Mark had some conversations prior to me taking this role with a clerk earlier, that it was on an average of one person an hour. I can't tell you what the exact hours were that they were open on Saturdays, so I know it was minimal.
And then DJ, in your proposal, was it an all-day Saturday you were looking at, or was it a
No, so my goal actually in tabling it and providing direction rather than just amending it myself is that we would defer to the clerk and staff to say this is what's appropriate, so that we would ask the staff to determine the day of the week per week for extended hours, and also determine the hours that are appropriate. Again, looking at those communities that I think are similar in size and population to Oshkosh, which some are 8 to noon, or sometimes they are all day, but that's the latitude that I was hoping that that they would get.
And then for the extended hours, have we ever tried a day of the week that had like a past 5 p.m. type of thing? Or?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Have-
I don't believe
that
we
you know.
did. We did, and to answer the question, I think it was either 8 to 1 or 9 to 1 on Saturdays.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you. I would just like this concept to be explored. This is not, for me, the reason why I support referring this back is not because I think city staff did a bad job on this, but because I would like us to at least explore the concept of potentially expanding those hours. I always point to the snowstorm that we had this past April on Election Day, and so we want to give as many people in our city the opportunity to vote as possible. And so with that, I would like us to at least explore that option. So going forward, that may potentially be a possibility, but if city staff and Clerk Bartlett, if you don't think that's a possibility, that's okay. I just want to hear your thoughts on it and see if we can explore it. So thank you.
Yep, Councilmember. Bula.
Yeah, I'd like to forgive me already.
Yes.
In favor, I'm supporting, generally supportive of any expanded access to voting for everybody. My question that I had is escaping me on live TV. That's great. Go ahead, come back to me.
Councilmember Larson.
Sure, I just wanted to voice support with the proposal to table it and add to it. As someone who employs lots of people who work different hours, I oftentimes hear that people can't get to the polling place the hours that is open. So options to have more than that would be fantastic.
Well, these aren't, just to clarify, I think, and Councilmember Nichols, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were talking about not on election day.
Yep.
These are leading up to, and there are certain restrictions with state law. Mr. Mayor, if I could, just one question for the city clerk. What's the latest the council can adopt this and you still need to do whatever notices you need to do?
It has to be legally published, our early absentee hours by July 16th.
Okay, so your next meeting will be your,
It'll be the
Do or die.
go-to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
so we're okay. You're okay delaying it as well.
And Mayor, for me.
You go, yeah, go ahead, and then we have Councilmember.
Well, that was my question, so we're good.
Okay.
And just the intention of my motion to table and provide direction is that the resolution would come back with the expanded hours and the Saturday dates listed. And so that's actually the proposal we would vote on. And then, of course, we'd be open to any other feedback, and we could amend at that time to city manager's point.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Does it have to be tabled? Can we?
It would. I would
Lay
ask
over.
layover
Lay
would be
over
the
to-
appropriate request. Table says it doesn't come back until you make
Bring
another
it on.
motion.
Sure.
We'd rather just bring it back.
So the motion is to lay over. Thank you for the clarification.
That's what I heard.
Good, thank you.
So lay over to the Tuesday, July 9th meeting. Any other discussion? Councilmember Ressler? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, I don't have any problem with looking into additional days, but maybe for the staff, would it be more wise to just go ahead and pass this? And if we want to add days, we can do that at the next council meeting?
And that's what I was kind of thinking too. Are we allowed to approve this now and then?
It's probably cleaner if we do one pass at it, if we're not under a time constraint at this meeting to do so, given that they can still publish and it'll be published on that Saturday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll take care of it at the next council and then publish it as soon as possible.
Any other discussion on the motion to lay over? Seeing none, if you'll take the roll on laying over 24-338 into the July 9th council meeting.
Larson?
Aye.
Esslinger?
Aye.
Flom?
Aye.
Bulow?
Aye.
Stevenson?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Mughawar?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next up, pending ordinance 24-365, amends section 2-24 of the City of Oshkosh Municipal Code pertaining to the authority of the city attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? If you'll take the roll on 24-365.
Larson?
Aye.
Esslinger?
Aye.
Flom?
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
We have 3 new ordinances this evening. We don't anticipate any action on these 3. Ordinance 24-366, approve Boschwitz number 2 annexation from the town of Oshkosh, west side of the 2900 block of Vinland Street. Planning Commission recommends approval. That'll come back at the next meeting. Ordinance 24-367, approve Boschwitz number 3 annexation from the town of Oshkosh, west side of the 27 to 2800 blocks of Vinland Street. Planning Commission also recommends approval of that one, and that'll come back for a vote at the next meeting as well. And then ordinance 24-368, create sections 13-14 and 17-41 and amend sections 13-20 and 17-46 of the City of Oshkosh Municipal Code to prohibit false reporting of emergencies.
Can I ask a clarifying question of Chief Stanley?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So Chief Stanley and I had some back and forth here. I'm supportive of this ordinance. I should say that. I know we'll have one more bite at the apple next week when we read it. Or I'm sorry, next council meeting when we read it and discuss it. But what was incredibly helpful for me, I had some concerns reading it that the perception of this ordinance may be that we are limiting the services we are willing to provide, and that's not at all the intent here. So I'd ask if Chief Stanley, if you don't mind, just to talk about the applicability of this ordinance, as well as the training that is associated with the enforcement of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. That, as Councilmember Nichols indicated, this is no way a measure to try to limit services to 911 or to try to discourage people from calling 911 when they have an emergency. As you see in the title, it's for people that are falsely reporting. And we're seeing an increase in the number of people that are calling 911 and saying, I'm having chest pain, I smell natural gas, any other number of things that would justify an emergency response. And when we get there, either the police department or the fire department arrives and, well, no, I'm really not having chest pain, but I would like you to provide these home health care services. I'd like you to feed my cat, pull up my socks, help me clean up waste from an accident, things of that nature. And they repetitively call, and they're tying up the city resources from public safety so that they cannot be able to respond to other emergencies in a timely fashion. And as I shared with council that we've got 7 people that have called 911 137 times between them for this year. Very disproportionate outlier. And like I said, when we look into those cases, and we hear back from the crews that responded to them, that they're asking for non-emergency type services, that are above and beyond what we would normally provide. We've worked very closely with the city attorney's office as we've developed this ordinance change, and this is not something that we hope to use or envision using with a great frequency. Hopefully it's more infrequent, but this gives us the mechanism to modify behavior, so that we can take some legal action. It also mirrors the state statutes, but allows us to do a citation locally. That within the fire department, we'll only have 2 people that can issue citations, one being the fire marshal, who already does and has historically done that. The other will be our division chief of EMS, and we've been working with the city attorney's office to develop that process of how that works, what information we need to provide so that we are doing it effectively and accurately. So I appreciate the opportunity to explain.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions for the chief on this one? Okay, we'll be coming back at the next meeting for action. Move on to new resolutions. Resolution 24-369, approve acquisition of property located at 222 Pearl Avenue for Go Transit Downtown Transit Center expansion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I see none. We'll take the roll.
Larson,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Flom,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 24-370, approve amendment to TID 40 development agreement with MK Lofts LLC.
Move it.
moved. Oh, second.
Any discussion on this one?
Oh,
Councilmember Stevenson?
sure. So in this development agreement, we are extending the completion deadline of the lofts. I guess I just wanted to point out, it's moving it from June to December. Whether it's June or December, the city still gets its money. The way tax increment finance districts work, the way taxation works is it's what's there the first of the year. So as long as this is done by the end of the year, it's the same amount collected in increment or in taxation, whether it was done in June or whether it's done in December. So I'm perfectly okay moving this deadline to give the developer some time to get these things together, but then also letting the public know that it doesn't hurt our bottom dollar when it comes to this tax increment finance district. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Anything you want to share?
No, they are just having some issues with their subcontractors, but if you have driven by there lately, it looks great. So they're really close. The owner, Kip Golden from CR Structures, he was going to be here tonight, but unfortunately he got sick. So I said I would, answer any questions I can, but they're very committed to the city and are doing a great job.
No, we're excited to see the project come online and people starting to move into that space, so. really nice.
Absolutely.
If there's no other comments on 24-370, if the city clerk could take the roll.
Larson?
Aye.
Esslinger?
Aye.
Flom?
Aye.
Bulow?
Aye.
Stevenson?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Mughawar?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 24-371, approve land acquisition of vacant property located at the east end of Farmington Avenue. Plan Commission recommends approval.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I see none. Please take the roll.
Larson?
Aye.
Esslinger?
Aye.
Flom?
Aye.
Bulow?
Aye.
Stevenson?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Mughawar?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 24-372, approve 2025 to 2026 City of Oshkosh Strategic Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Larson?
Just a tiny one. I wasn't here when this was drafted. I didn't have much of a say in how it was drafted, so I'm certainly not going to say that I think any of it should be changed because I think it's pretty good. The part I care the most about is on page 6, talking about streamlining the permitting process and implementing one process improvement per year. I just wanted to bring up that I hope it's more than that.
Any other? I see none. If you'll take the roll on 24-372.
Larson?
Aye.
Esslinger?
Aye.
Flom?
Aye.
Bulow?
Aye.
Stevenson?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Mughawar?
Aye.
Carried 7.
If you don't mind, it's worth noting on that one, I should have mentioned it, but I'll do it now. Significant input goes into the strategic plan for the city of Oshkosh. Stakeholder groups, from community members, division and department heads, senior leadership at the city, as well as all council members, go through different all-day trainings or all-day sessions to try to make sure that moving the city in the right direction and moving us forward. And just so those at home and those who may write about it, it's a lengthy process that the city undertakes, but it's a good, healthy thing for us to keep doing. And we do ours on a 2-year cycle. I was just talking with Councilmember Stevenson before the meeting about it, and doing it in such a way that it allows city staff to then start building a budget based upon those strategic priorities. So with that, we'll move into council discussion, direction to city manager, future agenda items. We have 48A as ARPA grant recommendations and discussion. We do have several people registered in this one. The way this will work, so council is going to discuss it after you folks speak. This is normal. I just want to give you a heads up on that. I've got 6 individuals, starting with Denise Holtz, followed by Anthony Gonzalez. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium on this side for us. Reminder that comments are limited to 5 minutes, and it's got to stick to the topic at hand. In this case, it's the ARPA grant recommendations and discussion. Welcome.
Hi.
Denise Holtz, 463 Mount Vernon Street, Oshkosh. I'm here, I work with the day-by-day warming shelter, well, day-by-day shelter now, no longer warming shelter. We're happy to be included in the recommendation. It would go to supporting opportunities for our guests, well, the most vulnerable folks in our community, helping them with application fees for apartments. That was on average about $30 for application fees, security deposits, first month's rent, that sort of thing. On average for Oshkosh, a one-bedroom is $928, so that's what we're looking at there. COTS application fees, we work really closely with COTS, referring our guests that are ready for like a next level into their 2-year program. With their one-time application fee and the total deposit altogether, that's $385. So the funding will help assist there, and also providing like U-Hauls for furniture moving, things like that, welcome baskets, getting people set up for success in their unit. We did recently move a gentleman into COTS just the other day. Got a photo of him opening his door of his unit, so that's been a long time coming for him. And a big aspect on this piece is we did help a family of 4 recently move into a house in Neenah. And so that was a $2,100 expense, and I mean, well worth it, because we cleared up 4 beds in the shelter. They have a new life to begin, but it's those sort of stories that'll keep coming out. So we're grateful, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anthony Gonzalez is up next, followed by Sean Fitzgerald. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and appreciate your opportunity to hear me speak on behalf of Covey. My name is Anthony Gonzalez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. We have submitted a grant for $75,000 to complete facility improvements at our respite house located at 1325 Eastman Street in Oshkosh. It is a house that's been in existence since the 1994, to be specific. Covey's been providing services to our community for 50 years for individuals with disabilities, if you're not familiar. The respite home is providing, at this point, invaluable service to families of approximately 50,000 hours annually for respite care. Respite care reduces the risk of physical and mental health issues for caregivers and the individual that's being cared for. There's plenty of research behind that. Replacement of these critical building systems that's in the grant, so the roof, windows, and doors, contributes to our organization's long-term financial stability. It allows us to reduce energy costs and reduce maintenance and repair costs. If you're not familiar with how our system works, essentially, we are provided a reimbursement rate for the hours of care that were provided for respite. Unfortunately, the rate that we are reimbursed at doesn't get anywhere near providing the costs associated with something like these facility updates. It does not cover them whatsoever. So it requires us as an organization to reach out to the community to get assistance to make this happen. And we're very grateful that you are considering this ARPA grant. It is a critical service to vulnerable individuals in our community, and we're hoping that you will help us, among others, support us getting the house to where it needs to be. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Sean Fitzgerald, followed by Rodney Barrage. Good evening.
Great. Thank you, Council. Sean Fitzgerald, I am the president of the Hooper Community Center, 36 Broad Street in Oshkosh. This is a big deal. This is a big decision that you have. This amount of money is twice as much as the annual allocation given out by United Way in Oshkosh. And it deserves to have a professional, well-executed process. And I've been disappointed with how the process is played out to this point. With no offense to anyone in the room, as council members, you make decisions about the civic needs of the community. You don't, on a day-to-day basis, make decisions on distributing large amounts of philanthropic dollars to not-for-profit organizations. City staff, very intelligent people, but again, they don't make decisions on a day-to-day basis about giving out philanthropic dollars to not-for-profit organizations. We do have professionals in the community who make these decisions on a day-to-day basis and work with these organizations at the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation and at the Oshkosh Area United Way. And their expertise was not put into use at all in developing the application, which I'm sorry was a poorly developed application that didn't capture the information that you need to make the decisions that you need to make with this big, important decision. They were not involved in helping to develop the criteria for vetting and evaluating these applications that came in. And you know, it's clear in reviewing some of the recommendations that, you know, there are best practices in philanthropic dollar disbursement, grant disbursement, that just weren't employed in the process of evaluating these applications and developing the recommendations that you receive, which ultimately, I mean, you didn't get professional qualified guidance in those recommendations. And again, it's no offense to the work of the city staff, but you don't do this on a day-to-day basis. I'd like to, I know your backs are against the wall to get these disbursements made by the end of the year. I'd really like the council to consider stepping back to the day after the applications were submitted and due, and begin this process over again, hold some workshops, allow each of the applicants 3 or 4 minutes to make their pitch in person, because there was no opportunity other than the application form. There was no other outreach that came to us. And you know, as I said, the application form itself didn't capture everything that needed to be delivered. In particular, I guess when I look at the recommendations and think about best practices in philanthropic management, some of the areas, I'm not naming organizations or applicants, but brand new programs delivered by brand new organizations that have no track record of delivering any kind of impact in the community. And that's what you're buying with the dollars that you're investing in any program, is impact. Those are simply just experiments in the community at this point. You know, one of those applications was proposing to pay its clinical director $100 an hour, and had occupancy costs of $90,000 for the year. Those are organizations that just don't have experience managing something on the scale that Oshkosh demands when you're talking about those kind of numbers. And you've been recommended to give them funding to propose that. So please seriously consider taking a step back and going, you know, allowing, again, all the other applicants, all 51 of us, I know it'll take a couple hours, but 3 to 4 minutes to deliver a report on what we're doing. You can ask questions and get some guidance from the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation professionals and the Oshkosh Area United Way professionals before we go into that workshop process. With that, I know you all have open minds, and even though I feel those of us that didn't receive a recommendation are facing an uphill battle, I'm going to just use the quick remainder of my time here to talk about the Hooper Community Center. Excuse me, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we have been serving the community since 1956. We are a landlord, we are a building, we are real estate. I know that's not very exciting and very sexy, but the work we do as a not-for-profit ourselves is provide tenancy for the administrative offices of other not-for-profit organizations. We've had over 25 not-for-profit organizations in that 80-year history or 70-year history that we have. Currently, we have 8 not-for-profits. We serve them with below-market rents, where we are paying the costs of the energy and water utilities, maintenance, snow removal, cleaning, and security costs, so that we can keep their rent prices low, and they can then continue to deliver basic human services to Oshkosh area residents. We were thrown in the category in the form that you received with the different categories of funding is simply infrastructure, and that's too bad. It's erroneous and it's wrong. Our tenants that are at the Hooper Community Center serve every single one of the needs that are on that list. And you know, much like some of the other applicants that have infrastructure projects that were recommended here, you know, we have same and similar needs. We had requested $60,000 for what was a $240,000 project to simply modernize our 140-year-old building. It's a project that we're going forward with and seeking other community partners. We only asked for 25%. This is including efforts to improve HVAC, particularly on the outside of the building, our parking lot, lighting, security, implementing, excuse me, implementing more energy efficient fixtures throughout the interior of the building. And you know, the outside security, I'm sorry, that included some security fencing as well. In those last components, I have to emphasize, have become more critical in the last 18 months here. The Hooper has been a victim to a increase in the amount of vandalism, break-ins, theft, and overnight encampments that we've experienced. And many of it is come from people that have been turned away from Day by Day. And Day by Day has been a terrific partner with us, but we are facing some increasing costs to the course of tens of thousands of dollars here. So ask that you reconsider our request. My email and phone number is on the application if anyone wants to reach out for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Rodney Barrage, followed by Robert Cervase. So I got that right. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rodney Barrage. I'm the founder and president of Operation Dream North, which is a nonprofit that I created last May. We did the Juneteenth celebration at the Leach Amphitheater last year, 2023, and the second one this year, 2024. I've been doing youth and community programs for over 30 years in Milwaukee. I moved to Oshkosh 4 years ago and started trying to do youth programs and connecting with community-based organizations and the leadership here in town. I see a lack of youth programs here in Oshkosh, and I see a lot of barriers for youth development and for our children to excel and thrive. So I started working with youth when I first got here in 2020, and I've been doing programs on my own with my own dime, funding programs since then. I've done a lot of this type of work in other areas of the state, but now I'm doing it in Fox Valley and Oshkosh. I did it in Fond du Lac for a couple years before started working strictly with Oshkosh. I've rented a office at the Boys and Girls Club, New Hyatt Center, to start day-to-day operations, and we have a memorandum of understanding now to actually rent the gym and the cafeteria and the game room at the Boys and Girls Club on Saturdays when they're not open, but we would open for free youth programs. I'm looking to impact over 100 children this coming school year, 24-25 school year, by having a Saturday program for youth, school-age youth, and also work training for teenagers, go forward to work program. So I have a list of 5 different programs, and we're looking for funding and hoping that you guys award us funding so we can help these children and help these marginalized families. There's a lot of support needed for our children, especially our marginalized families, with all the disparities that we have come to know. And I'm actually doing something about it with a lot of the community leaders here that I've connected with to try to make a difference in children and families' lives, especially marginalized families, children of color, and poverty-stricken families. And there's a lot. I come from Milwaukee, and I've done this type of work in the trenches of the inner city of Milwaukee for over 30 years. So I kind of see what it looks like upstream, and I'm very concerned about this this region, this area, this city, Fox Valley, when it comes to crime and gangs and drugs and our children being caught off in these vicious circles of poverty and drug abuse and neglect and abuse. And we have to be there for our children. That's my history, that's my track record of being there and doing things and not kicking the can down the road, but actually making an impact and getting to the root causes of issues and problems. And that's what I do, and I try to meet my goals and objectives, and now I'm hoping that I can partnership with the city to make sure that we get to these children that need us the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Robert Servais, and then followed by Jennifer Van Roy.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to hear about Lakeside Packaging Plus. We've submitted a request for $90,000 to add a courtyard to one of the sides of our building. We have 2 locations. We've been in business for 62 years serving people with developmental disabilities, and we're doing it proudly, and it's an exceptional time at Lakeside. We're located at 100 West Fernald Avenue. We serve, like I said, 225 clients in the Winnebago and Outagamie counties. I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer Van Roy, my talented Chief Operating Officer, to go through some of the details of our courtyard. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is that a little better? Good evening. This project was developed in response to our clients with disabilities expressing a need to be outdoors more. One of the gaps in services that we found is that for those who have wheelchair who utilize wheelchairs or have limited mobility, access to be able to get to outdoor recreation areas can be more difficult. In response, we have worked with several contractors to develop a very an area alongside of our building, which is on 5 acres on the north side of Oshkosh. In this area, we would include a wheelchair accessible concrete path. It would approximately 5 times around the path would equal a mile. So this would support our wellness initiatives that we provide on site. We will also have raised vegetable and herb gardens, butterfly gardens, a fire pit area. We provide animal encounter programs. So this would be a great place to be able to have the Menominee Zoo, who comes on site inside our facility right now, to be able to bring those, the tortoises and skunks outside the facility and see them in a natural habitat or natural area. We also see that this would be an area, an ability to participate in education regarding nature and gardening. With the raised herb gardens and the vegetable gardens, we plan to continue to grow produce that could be used not only by our clients, but our clients would be able to share that with places like the Oshkosh Area Community Fund Pantry, which we've already started discussions about the partnership regarding that. This project would benefit 100+ clients in the Oshkosh area. It would also help provide part-time employment opportunities to individuals with disabilities to help maintain the area with support of job coaching that we provide on site. We envision this being an area too that the community can participate in activities with people with disabilities, whether it's through our volunteer opportunities, our community events. We really want this to be a welcome area for all. With that, I'm sorry, I'm really nervous, but thank you so much for considering our application.
Thank you. Thank you. Last one I have registered is Ashley Hess. Welcome.
Evening all. Thank you. 2 points. One, I just want to speak kind of on my own behalf, and the other, just representing Casa Esther, just 2 hats real quickly. One, just sort of the comments about the process and some of it. Yes, some of it is wonky. Some of it still remains a little wonky, and I know you have independent minds. You can make your own decisions, recognizing these are just recommendations. And they do carry some weight, but there are some questions that I had just in general regarding the actual scorecard the city used, and the weight that even plays in the decision-making process of the final, recipients of these grants. Because if I look at some of them, they're scoring at the top 15, as far as quality and qualifications, which included measures of DEI and dispensing a proper use of funds by December 31st, 2024, like very clear markers. But yeah, if you read through some of the applicants and some of the awardees, I question, like, hey, they're just sort of saying they'll use the money when they want, how they want. There's questions there, just in my mind as I reviewed it. So, but then the other thing I was going to say, I just, not just because there's new organizations that are also recipients of money doesn't mean that they aren't qualified, because they're coming up with solutions that may not have been met, or there's a need here, so they're developing new programs as well. So, just there was a comment about, new organizations maybe not having the history or the quality or the experience to do the work and carry it out. But I think their applications speak for themselves, and the quality of the persons involved speaks for themselves there. But really, I just wanted to touch base on Casa Esther in particular, because I see how the money flows, and I know the purpose of it, and I've heard that the city wanted to sort of reduce some of its administrative burden by limiting the number of recipients and applicants and people getting money. But for Casa Esther, if you're not familiar, because you may not be, they've never come to the city looking for money. They've never come to the county looking for money. They've been a benefit to the residents of Oshkosh for well over a decade. They primarily have a history of serving our Hispanic-speaking populations of people that just aren't current recipients of many of the services, because they aren't geared for immigrant or migrant or refugees coming from south of the border, just to be quite frank. Casa Esther provides direct housing support. All the money they are asking for is like a basic needs, is to prevent and reduce homelessness, to maintain housing for persons and employment. It's almost all direct assistance. They get a bunch of referrals from existing recipients and others that are in here. Consistent referrals for housing support and services, because none of the other organizations, their money's too restricted. I'll say Casa Esther asks no questions. If there's a need, they meet it. And oftentimes those needs, as we know across the country, you can prove it. It's $500, $700 prevents families from going into astronomical crisis. A car repair, something silly, a broken, heater or air conditioning. Like, oftentimes it's little bits of money, but I just want to say, it's a quiet one. It's a sleeper, if you will, amongst the mix. And they're meeting DEI, underrepresented groups. They're meeting the homelessness, immediate and crisis prevention and immediate needs of persons, as well as just maintaining housing and teaching people how to sustain their own lives through growing food and being managing money. It's just a lot of things about how to live in America, how to do things right. But they're out there doing work, and 80% of the people they serve come from Oshkosh. I mean, I just remember at the last DEI meeting I was at, there was a donation to one of these, another organization here from Casa Esther, small donation of food, but nonetheless, it's like they're always giving, whether it's the persons, organizations. They seldom ask for money. They just don't. But here we are, and it would make a big difference. So if there's room to reconsider things, let's put that crew on the table for you to reconsider, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's the last of the registered speakers. Is there anyone else here who wanted to speak on this that hadn't had a chance to register? All right. So the public portion of this is closed, and on to council discussion and on the topic. Don't everybody jump at it.
I'll start off with a question. I kind of, this is maybe for staff. So how do we, I guess, envision distributing this money? And especially if we have some of those ones that have, they need like a match. Are we going to wait until they get that match? I guess if you guys just want to give us a little insight.
One of the things that we did with the first round of applications is each contract is designed specifically for that grant. So the big challenge is we didn't have a lot of operating funds last time. So the challenge will really be for the operating, because for the capital, they typically have to have the funds raised for them to match. For example, the Salvation Army already has their funds matched. That'll be fairly easy. With respect to the ones with the operating, it'll be a little tougher, because if they have very little operating funds, and we're funding a good part of it, how do you guarantee that? We've done that through some of our community development block grant programs, and we're probably going to follow similar guidelines for that. But each one will be based on the individual application and how we do it. But the operating ones will probably be the most difficult.
Sure. So I guess generally kind of a mixed bag is each one's gonna be pretty unique, is that?
Yeah, I mean, with the first round, we customized, we had a standard contract, but then the attachment, the addendum to each individual one's customized for every application.
Sure.
Why don't I do this? Otherwise, go ahead, Councilmember Esslinger. Otherwise, I was going to ask City Manager Roloff to maybe kind of give us a little background, a little lead up to the discussion today.
I'll just give it a shot here, I guess. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of the folks, whether you're here tonight or not, for applying for these. I'm 59 years old, been an Oshkosh resident all my life, a little over 12 years on the council, and when I went over these 51 applications, it was heartwarming to see how many people we have in this community that do good with the dollars that they get, however they can scratch out these dollars and help all the people that you're helping out. So kudos to all of you. I listened very intently to Mr. Fitzgerald, and I couldn't agree with him more. This is, in my opinion, a mess. And you look at this money was given out, just so the public knows, these are federal dollars that they don't have, that they gave us to dole out a couple years ago. And if I'm correct, I think we have one council member left that was among that group that was given this money. And since then, and there was criteria that council at the time gave the city manager to look at. And I respect all of that. That was their job, and I think they did their job. But now we have 6 different council members that may or may not have different criteria that was originally outlined. And I'll speak for myself, I do have different criteria. Just so the public knows, my criteria for giving this money out will go to children, senior citizens, and veterans. And I would like to see the money being used by as many people as possible within those parameters. So we, the last couple councils asked the city manager to come up with recommendations, and he has done that. I appreciate his thoughts, and he's worked with a lot of these different organizations, so I appreciate all that. Where I think we kind of went off the rails here is when the city manager sent out two letters, one to the individuals who he's recommending, and then I believe there's another letter that went out to the individuals that are not on his recommendation list. And when I read those letters, especially the one where they're not recommended to me, this is just my opinion, to me it sounded like you're not getting the money, and so sorry, go away. I don't mean like that, but you're not getting the money. And that's not true, because as I said, we have different criteria here, and the city manager's got, I don't know, is it 12, 13, whatever recommendations. I looked at that, and there's 3 on here that I agree with his recommendations. And I've got a list, I don't want to get into that now, take too much time, but I've got a list of my own, but I'm not naive enough to think that I'm going to come up with this list and say, here, council, this is what I think we should do with the money, and it's going to pass 7-0. That's just simply not going to happen. So I did discuss at previous council meetings the method of, just like Mr. Fitzgerald said, we invite everyone to come, give them their 5 minutes, and then somehow we hash that out, and that didn't happen. And now it's coming home to roost. So I have no idea how we're going to do this. I really don't. I'd love to hear other comments by other council members and staff. If it were up to me, I would take Mr. Fitzgerald's recommendations and lay this over. I know we're getting to the 11th hour on this, and hear these people, because again, with those letters that went out, I don't think we were fair to the folks that were not on the recommended list. That we had their application, I understand that, but I like talking to people. I like them coming up and giving their speech, their 5-minute speech, to sell their product or service, and it didn't happen. So I mean, I could probably talk about some other stuff here, but I don't want to take up too much time. So I'll play the game here and come up with other ones that I think we should remove, and then you're gonna get into, well, he doesn't think that my organization is good, or then you get into that. And that's just the last thing. Again, all of these folks, and the criteria is good, the folks are good, the causes are great, so I wish we had enough money to give everyone their money. It's just not gonna happen. So the 7 council members, we're gonna be good guys and bad guys to different people, and that's just the way it's gonna have to happen. So, Mayor, I'm just saying that I think that we should heed the warning, I think, by one individual here had spoken. I think there's probably other ones that probably would have the same opinion, that they would like to be able to give their opinions at a council workshop meeting, special meeting, whatever you want to call it. I think we should do that process, and I know that, and again, I said it gets ugly. We used to do this with community development block grant funds years and years ago, and then we did use the Oshkosh Foundation. In fact, I was even in one of those meetings where they brought all the people in, and I greatly appreciate their thoughts too. But the issue I have with that is their tax dollars. And while, again, I wanted to hear the city manager's recommendations, we are the ones that are elected, and we have to disperse those dollars. So if the council were to be available, or to be in those meetings where they come up with this criteria, with their own criteria, and where they think it should be handed out, I think that's fine. But I don't see that happening. So like I said, I don't know what we're gonna do here. But my recommendation is to start this over and have these people come forward, and then the council is gonna have to sit together and come up with how we're gonna do this. Sorry for being long-winded, but that's my suggestion. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Larson, followed by Councilmember Nichols.
Sure, and I'll just echo some of that. I sort of expected, and I don't want to belabor any points. As Councilman Esslinger pointed out, there's only one of us who was here when this process started. I have a lot of deference to the way this process was put forth in the first place. I think the folks who did a good job, and I'm not ever going to be the guy who's in the position of changing the work that councils before me have done. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's how this was supposed to work. I did, however, think that when Councilman Stevenson called for a workshop the last time we met, that this would be the opportunity to hear from lots of people. And I do think probably receiving a letter in advance of this meeting saying you were either recommended or not recommended contributed to the fact that not that many people came to explain it, right? I thought that's what we were going to do. But to that point, the deference I have for the practice and the way this is set up is city staff makes recommendations, they make them to council, and council decides based on those recommendations. If you read the agenda item on this, it states that very succinctly. It states that we are discussing the recommendations made by city staff. That's akin to the policy previously. I did talk to city manager Roloff about it. There weren't emails sent out in advance before. I don't want to belabor the point that that's good, bad, or otherwise, and I know that there's a reason that people were notified in advance, and that's probably a positive. But I don't know if it made this harder than it might have been today without that being the case. So I'm sort of where Councilman Esslinger is at. I don't know what the next step is. I don't disagree with anything that's been recommended either necessarily. So it puts us in a harder position than we might have been, shorter, because the meeting will be shorter, but it puts us in a harder position because there are different metrics at play here than there might have been if it was everybody discussing.
Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. I don't disagree with what's been said already. I guess just to echo the point, I think these dollars should have already been spent. I think that in 2021, when they were allocated, that the councils before us should have had the opportunity to continue through the end of their process that they designed. But to Councilmember Larson and Councilmember Esslinger's point, we're the ones sitting up here today, so we will make the decision because it's in front of us and we need to spend these dollars. I guess if it's okay, City Manager, I just have two questions. I know that we had, you and I had discussed the classification of certain applicants, and I know the city did their best to designate certain projects as being classified in certain ways. I think in our discussion, you were considering sending out an email to those applicants saying, if you feel like you've been misclassified, if you feel like you have something else to add, please let the city know so that we could so that you could create those recommendations and provide them to us under the classification that people would designate themselves as. I'm just curious if that email went out and if you received any responses.
I can't recall I've been trying to make sure I pull up everything we sent out. I don't have that specific email, but we did send something out, and I know we did get some people that did ask, we'd like you to put these as the priorities, and we honored those requests and everything. The idea was when we went through that exercise, the purpose of the exercise was to illustrate for council the breadth of the different applications we had. And it was really to, at the May 29th meeting, I believe it was, the council had approved those 4 priority areas, and it was really to demonstrate we could have probably had 15 to 20 different categories, and we could do any of these. My suggestion is that we focus on these 4. Council went along with that, and some people, when they saw that, well, we believe we're this or that. Honestly, that exercise wasn't to put them in or take them out of consideration. They were really more to help illustrate for council that we needed to get some focus. So that was not heavily used. We did take a look at each application and say, where does this fall into one of the 4 categories that council had approved? And that's what we focused on. So we weren't looking for them to, as a gotcha moment, oh, you didn't say the magic word type of thing. Some people said, I think our 3 descriptors should be A, B, and C, and we're like, okay, we'll make that change for you. And that may or may not have helped them with those 4 criteria. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's absolutely helpful.
Okay.
And I think it just, my question really speaks to process. I think, again, this has been a very long process. I think that it could have been run better. I think probably most processes in every environment, this isn't a critique of the city, this is a critique of life. Most processes on the back end afterwards, you think probably could have been done better had you known then what you know now. So I acknowledge that, and I appreciate that. And so I think we will take some of this, hopefully we never have COVID again, and we never have to receive something like ARPA funds again, right? So anyway, if it does, I think we'll run that process better later. I guess my second question is, I guess, a little more granular. I noticed of the $2.4-ish million, I think 670-ish thousand goes to governments. And 2 of those applications were to City of Oshkosh, and the number of $600,000. One was, I think, 70 plus to the
They're
school.
300, 2 at 300 even.
2 of 300, so 600, 300 each, right?
Yeah.
So 600, and then the Oshkosh Area School District, just again another government, just so I can classify everyone the same way, is 77.5. I guess, was there 2 questions? Was there preference given to those projects, understanding that council does have an interest, especially with the city-related ones, for the workforce housing projects? Was there preference given to those projects because of that by council? And secondly, are those projects funded otherwise, or was funding considered otherwise when they were presented to council initially? Because I don't think that ARPA was the contingency for actually conducting those projects.
When we brought the different priorities to council, council had just adopted the housing study and placed a high priority on that. And council had given direction to work on both of those projects. With that in mind, there were other funding sources, but they weren't sufficient to get the job done. So these are costs that would directly be applied to residents. So it's not saving the city money, it's saving a potential homeowner money. So even though it does get, I'll say the word laundered, I don't want to be negative about it, but the money goes through the city, but it really is to directly benefit people who are looking for their first home, and in the case of Habitat, a home that they probably wouldn't otherwise be able to afford were it not for Habitat. So that was a partnership with Habitat. So yes, in fairness, yes, 2 of them, and arguably 3, are governmental entities. But given the priorities and given everything, the push we've been putting on housing, I felt it was very appropriate to emphasize housing in this category, and that's why I recommended it, and I think that's why council said, yeah, we like housing as one of them, so that's why I did it.
And I guess, sorry, my final question, I promise, Mayor. So I agree with those 4 categories, and I'll recall the city manager came back to us twice just to confirm, are these the categories that you talked about? We had a very late meeting when we talked about it the first time, and we had a second opportunity to actually weigh in on them. And so I do agree with those 4 categories, and I'm supportive of it. I guess my question, as I think through this, and we've made the point a couple of times that this is a very different council than existed when these funds were allocated, 25% of the total ARPA funds were allocated towards nonprofits. Do you feel, city manager, that the intent of the original council, that providing these funds to the city of Oshkosh to do these initiatives, that was the intent of the original council? You were sitting there, and I wasn't sitting here. So I want to understand, I guess, what your perspective is.
Yeah. I'll split the difference with the mayor on this one, because the mayor has been part of this, and maybe the mayor might offer some perspective. He may agree or disagree with me. I believe the idea was that try not to focus on infrastructure, and the only infrastructure, and we used the category of infrastructure with the application, really was more about capital. These are capital costs. I don't consider them city infrastructure, so I felt it was appropriate. And there were others that, you know, if I'm guilty of anything, I'm guilty of encouraging people to apply and then saying, I got to narrow this down because so many people applied. I'd say the direction from the council last fall, and now I'll put 4 of the council members on the spot. The idea was we need to do a better job of getting the word out, and I think we were extremely successful by virtue of the fact we had 51 applications. So then we had to narrow it down. It's like, well, how do I narrow it down? And that's where I went. So I don't know if I purposely only answered half your question, and I don't know, Mayor, I may be putting you on the spot, but what's your thought on that?
I'll briefly answer that, and then I'll save my other stuff for later. I think so. I think it was part of the vision that it definitely was a possibility. The original 75 was supposed to be held within City Hall in terms of physical infrastructure, physical things that we needed to do or that just doesn't ever get done, and we needed funding sources. And then the other 25%, $5 million-ish, was to impact the community. I think was the way I, in my head, took it. It could have been social programs. It could have been different groups, different things that that didn't get funded or didn't have the opportunity to be funded in different ways, you know, from the federal or state level during COVID. But I definitely think that the original council would be supportive of that, and that it would have been included in that idea. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you both.
I think it was Councilmember Flom, followed by Councilmember Stevenson, and then I'll go.
So I just wanted to echo a number of things that other council members have said. My frustration with this process isn't so much about the recommendations themselves, but it's about the process that has taken place. One of the biggest concerns that I have is that ultimately the buck stops with City Council, and so when a recommendation letter goes out, the perception is that this is the final decision that was made before council even took a vote. And I understand that that's not the case. I understand that we have the final authority on this. But really what frustrates me is the fact that there were 51 applications. Many of them were very, very good. It was hard to say no to people, but ultimately we are going to have to. But when when City Hall sends out a letter like this, basically saying the decision's already been made, then we can't really have the conversation that we want to have today. And I understand that we're doing that now. But it does put a chilling effect, in my opinion, on the number of people who may want to engage, especially if they got a letter saying that they weren't, recommended. And so I thought the conversation we were going to be having today is looking at methodology of how to disperse funds, how much we were going to disperse to each project. Do we want a wide set? Do we want a narrow set? And I know those conversations have been had prior, but I would like to have them again today. And so really my concern and frustration with this whole process is that it looks like, I'll say it again, that we're preempting a decision before we've even made one. And we have been better with communication. We have gotten the word out to people. It was great that we got 51 applications. I want to thank everybody who came today to make their case, whether you were recommended or not. But mainly my frustration stems with the fact that it looks like we've made a decision before we really have. And so I understand that that's something that everyone may not agree with up here, but at the end of the day, this is one of the chief concerns with this process that I've had, not to make myself sound repetitive. We control policy. City staff controls operations. It looks like in this manner that's been switched.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yeah, so My intent to putting this workshop here wasn't for us to sit and complain about staff's processes. I'm sure if you didn't send that letter, you would have heard about it too. So I have no problem with the process we took. I have no problem with the letter that you sent. I think that we have done a really good job at communicating this to the public. Ultimately, we're going to be wrong no matter what we do. Every single person out there, everyone in the audience, you all have a different opinion on what should be approved and what should not be approved. Every single person up here has a different opinion. We all have a different opinion on how this process should work. I've been a part of government for a long time now, and I don't think I've ever been a part of a process that somebody said is perfect. It doesn't exist. I mean, I think we've done a really good job at communicating to the public. We've gotten a lot of applications here. My intent of this workshop here in council meeting workshop was to get into the minutia, was to get into the details, for us to go through these recommended applications, to talk about them. And if a certain organization didn't show up here, well, I'm sorry, shame on you. You should have shown up here. You have multiple times to come up here and speak to us. You can call me on the phone. You can email me. You can do anything you want to get your application in front of me. And that should be happening. And I know I've done some reaching out to organizations as well. So really, I like a lot of these recommendations. I really feel that we hit on housing, we hit on homelessness, we hit on even some education that I think was going to spring up, and then even a big input on TEI, which I think is so much needed. There are obviously a few things that I kind of wanted to sit and tease out and say, maybe I would have preferred one application or the other, but do I think we need to throw this whole process out? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I do not want to start over. I think it would be foolish. We could start over 10 times and never get it perfect. So really, what I wanted to do here today was to go over your recommendations and to go over any applications that you guys felt were strong outside of his application and see if we wanted to include those elsewhere. I think your comments about giving the city government or money is maybe worth exploring. I had a similar question that should we be really allocating projects to city funding? So those are the things I wanted to talk about today. I'd like to maybe get us a little bit more on task and go through some of those.
Nope, you go right ahead.
Okay. Some of my favorite words to say up here is I agree with Joe. So he made this easy. I've read the emails both for the you are currently recommended to you are not currently recommended, and we can go into wordsmithing of was that too aggressive or not too aggressive. But honestly, we're going to, I watched the previous meeting from Zambia, and I saw that we were going to have the recommendations before us when we were doing this discussion. So for us to not send out, hey, you're currently in the recommended or not currently in the recommended, I think that would have just been incredibly backhanded to make 51 people click on the link to see, hey, am I currently recommended or not? Did it have a chilling effect on people coming here? If you're used to raising money, the first no shouldn't be stopping you from coming in. We have people here that aren't currently recommended, came in to plead their case before us. I feel, as one of the 7 up here, that I was heard when I gave direction to Mark about what I wanted to see. These aren't the 15 that I would pick, but I feel like he listened to the recommendation that the 7 of us gave. I know he came to the DEI special committee to listen to the recommendations that they gave, not about this group or that group, but these are the priorities that we want to see. I feel like those are reflected. I don't think that any of this is perfect. I don't think that there, like Joe said, I don't think there's a way to do it perfect. Like I said, I mean, if we want to get into the minutia of, hey, let's swap this $10,000 from this group to that group, we can do that. But overall, I'm prepared to move forward with the, we're not voting on it tonight, but I'm prepared to move forward with the recommendations as presented if that is the consensus of the council.
I don't know that I've said this in my couple years of serving with these two, but I agree with Carl and I agree with Joe. I think every one of us said the word process tonight. That's a good thing. We're talking about trying to improve. We're talking about our, what we value. We're talking about how we see things, how we receive communications, and so several of us as up here stated, the process wasn't perfect. There isn't one. Could we do better? Sure. Armchair quarterback thing all you want on Monday morning. Can we do better? Yeah. Rewatch this council meeting tomorrow morning and you'll see something that one of us or all of us could have done better tonight too. So,
You remember my name.
right? I forgot Carl's name for a few seconds. I don't think the process has been that bad. I think from the beginning, this has been unique. This is a once in a generation, and I hope it's once in a generation, once in a lifetime fund of money from the federal government that we got to help improve the city of Oshkosh. And 7 council members several years ago made what I thought was a good and wise direction giving in terms of how to move forward with that. Be deliberate was one of the things, not reactionary. One of the city manager's favorite terms is keep our powder dry. We don't know what we don't know. We could have doled all this thing out, 2 or 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and been done, but we wouldn't have seen some of these requests. We wouldn't have seen some of these groups and their needs now, because those weren't there maybe at that time. They just developed. We wanted to make sure that we tried not to duplicate efforts, duplication of funds. The state, the county, the Fed, everybody was handing out money left and right. We wanted to try to get as much bang for our buck as possible in terms of the direction we gave. Councilmember Bulow's point, I think leaving last council meeting, tonight's, what was going to be before us tonight was very clear. We were going to see a list and we were going to have a discussion. And I think I tried to make sure that you all understood that it was probably going to be messy tonight. If I didn't do a good enough job of that, I'll do better next time. And that's okay if it's messy. The process can be. Government, the government's not perfect. Do I agree with, I guess, getting into the list and getting into the recommendation, do I agree with all of them? No. But there's no way I'm going to get what I want. But there's nothing in here about what I want. It's about moving the city of Oshkosh forward. So in terms of the priorities, I think those were met. The direction was given, and direction was followed. And I think these do a fine job of that. I think I have some concerns in there. If we want to talk about each individual one, we can do that, and I'll voice my concerns about individual ones. But generally, overall, I think this is this met what council has said privately and publicly to the city manager and to staff about what we were hoping for. One of my big concerns is trying to get funds accounted for by the end of this fiscal year so that we don't lose a single dollar. That's a big thing for me. There's a couple in here that they're not going to spend them, and there's even questions if they're ever going to spend them. I don't know that I'm going to convince 3 or 4 other people that sit up here that they're not worthy enough. So that's my thoughts on that. Other discussion? We've gone once around the table. Anybody want a second push of the button that doesn't exist?
I have questions on applications if we want to get into that stuff. Otherwise, people, if you have more overarching stuff, go for it.
I'll go right ahead.
I'll just add one more thing. We need to make a decision soon in light of everything that's been said tonight. I know that most of us, if not all of us, have some gripes with the policy process and the procedure. But ultimately, we need to make a decision. We need to make one soon. So with that, I'm happy to move into talking about the individual applications.
Sounds good to me. Councilmember Stevenson, you want to lead us off if you're interested?
If we did we want to go through each of the recommendations? Or I guess did you have an idea on how you want, or just let's kind of?
I put them into categories specifically out of the 4 priority areas. Sure. So I summarized it that way, and just tried to show tried to be as judicious as possible. I think that the legitimacy of the questions about governmental entities, non-governmental entities, that's a legitimate question. I'm certainly happy to answer questions specific to any individual application, but the idea is we tried to make sure that we allocated funds into all of these areas. And part of the reason some of the governmental ones were nobody else is going to be able to get their arms around a housing issue than the city. So was it purposely done to help the city, or is the city the only one that can do it? I would think it's the latter, not not necessarily the former. And I would also say that with respect to the letter, thank you for understanding some people are going to be happy and unhappy. I felt we needed to err on the side of transparency, and while somebody may not have wanted to get the bad news that they weren't being recommended, several people, some people said thank you and maybe interpreted it that that's it, they're done. There were other people who's like, but council does make the final decision, correct? And yes, council makes the final decision, and I think the idea of tonight was not to make a final decision, and I wouldn't be surprised at the next meeting that you have maybe some of these same people, but you may have a completely different group of people that either because tonight wasn't convenient for them or they recognize they still have another opportunity to talk to council about that. So I wasn't going to be specific about any one in particular, but I'm happy to answer any questions about anything in particular about why this one was chosen.
Why don't I kickstart it a little bit?
Please.
How about we do that? Otherwise, we're going to go around in a nice circle, right? Let's start with the way you broke them out. Housing's at the top. We have 2 projects that the city of Oshkosh wants potential, that city staff and at our direction would like to become involved in, right? The Washington school site, turning that into workforce housing, as well as we just authorized the purchase of Farmington Ave property this evening. These are projects that we're going to move forward with. Whether this is the funding source or not, we've given direction on these 2 things. We're gonna move forward on this. I think so. To a question to Councilmember Nichols, if you don't mind me referencing you here,
Sure.
Questioning if this was an appropriate use of this funds. I guess you're okay with it. Obviously, you suggested it, but we're going to move forward no matter what with these, right?
That's the council's direction. You approved the purchase tonight. I assume we're moving one way or the other.
So in terms of these 2 specifically for me, and you're not going to like them, I'm going to do this out loud. Whether we use ARPA funds or not, we have other funds available that we could potentially use. We always do, right?
These are currently
for these
to be determined.
Yes, in the CIP type of a
right.
role. Okay. I guess because the question got brought up, council's prerogative in terms of funding these 2 with ARPA dollars maybe is a good question to just kick off our discussion up here. Go ahead.
And I guess my question, so city manager, you mentioned that it sounded like we had identified some funds for these projects, but not all funds for these projects. And it strikes me that they are very round numbers and they are equal round numbers. I guess maybe this is just how it worked out, but that this is the remaining funds. Do these amounts fully fund those projects, or are we taking into account other dollars?
Oh, there are many other dollars. This is only one part of the funding source for this project.
So
for these projects.
Using Habitat for Humanity and City of Oshkosh Workforce Housing, Washington School for just as the example, so we're not talking about both. What is the total amount that we're spending on that project, and what percentage of this is that total amount?
Okay, just give me a second. The application itself had some of that, so I'll start with the Habitat one, and I think I'll ask Ms. Nyforth just to assist me as well. The entire project for Habitat is about $1.1 million, and there is some CDBG funds that are proposed to be used. Habitat for Humanity is also contributing some funds from the donations that they do. I believe about $200,000 from donors, and then they already have some grant funds that they received. And then about $200,000 will still need to come internally from the city over and above. Did I summarize that?
Absolutely, and I appreciate you looking at Farmington and Washington separately, because Washington is a partnership with Habitat for Humanity. So it is a very different project. It's going to be a different type of product that's out there. So looking at Washington specifically, we are over $1 million. It is a nice round number, but we are just starting the process of doing the site design and the engineering, platting, and all of those things that are required when you create a subdivision and an infill lot essentially in the central city. So we would like to utilize ARPA funds because, as City Manager Roloff said, we have a lot of other funding sources coming in. It looks like alphabet soup in there, but we are really trying to do what we can so the city does not have to borrow additional funds to move this project forward. And as we spoke about at our housing workshop about over a month ago now, we really want to use this Washington project as a proof of concept. And we want to be able to kind of start that workforce housing fund with this. So we just thought it was a great opportunity to utilize with Habitat, and Habitat has been a partner from day one on this project. They really have. So please look at this project as city and Habitat, because half of those lots will be for low to moderate income folks and families, and then the other will be between that 80 to 120%, which is that workforce housing.
I think it's appropriate to point out, they really are two
Oh, yeah.
separate projects. And, you know, if you were pushing me to the limit and saying, if we only did one, which one would you choose? I would absolutely choose Habitat, because that partnership, and I would include the school district in that partnership, because they sold it for a very discounted price. And within each application, and you can click it if you go through it, what we're trying to do is maximize the funds that we have. Community development block grant dollars have so many restrictions on it. So community development staff looks for what's the best way to use the community development block grant dollars, so we're not paying more than what we should pay for. Community development block grants are often the most difficult funds to use. So Kelly and her staff do a magnificent job of making sure that we that we stretch those dollars as far as we can. And so this is more flexible. The ARPA money is much more flexible. And so we want to be able to have that, because there will be areas that we won't have much flexibility on, and we need this for everything else.
The other part to note, I guess, when it came to original direction, was there things that we could do to have a lasting impact, to pay forward, how many years worth of payback could these dollars that we potentially give out, pay us back? And something like this, potentially generations. So that the payback is huge in terms of that, was one of my thoughts on it too. So, Councilmember Flom.
So, a couple points on a question. For the housing projects, I really want to appreciate your due diligence on that. I want to thank city staff for that. I know a lot of us up here ran on housing, especially the newer council members. And so I know for all of us that's a very important thing, and seeing more housing being built is part of that solution. So I want to thank you guys for all that. The next question I have here is about the methodology for some projects for nonprofits that were fully funded versus ones that were not fully funded. So I guess I'll extend this to the city manager. Could you kind of go into some of the reasoning and methodology behind those? I can see some of the nonprofits got maybe half of what they asked for, some got 90% of what they asked for, but some of them who had maybe some smaller asks got all of what they asked for. I'm just looking for some, I guess, direction on how some of those numbers came to be, and if that's too complicated of something to say right now, that's fine. But I'm just kind of looking for some clarification on that.
Sure. Just bear with me while I click more tabs. I have more tabs than I know what to do with tonight.
And I know reading through the applications, you do provide context, but if you can kind of wrap those into one, whether or not each application was given a different dollar amount based on some discrepancies within their application themselves, or if this was just a blanket sort of methodology that you guys used.
Okay. Here we go. Thank you for your patience. Some of them, for example, Advocamp and COTS were sort of the tail end of the allocations, and so that was somewhat arbitrary on how much we could afford. Sure. That was left. Advocamp had asked for $500,000. They still have some fundraising to do, and so all of these are going to be based on how well they do fundraising. But Advocamp, I mean, how do you go with $217,660? That one was all about math at the end. So just full disclosure. COTS, it was really more about, we wanted to do that one, even though, full disclosure, COTS did get funded in the first round, but that was really more of a partnership with the community foundation just to acquire the property. COTS hadn't even done anything with the property itself, and this will get them 10 of the 20. Their 200,000 request was to do 20 units, so as I put in the summary, this will get 10 of the 20 units done. They still have to do fundraising for the balance, but the idea was to get 10 more units. What that will do is somebody at Day by Day will be able to transition to COTS, and that's 10 fewer people that are going to be in Day by Day, which I'll transition to Day by Day. That's the reason that I was recommending Day by Day. They had two different requests. One was for operating funds because their cost of operations have gone up with the demand that they have, and while I certainly appreciated that, that's going to be something that they're going to have to do anyway, and down the road in the future they're going to have to do that. But I was really impressed with their program to get people out of their shelter, because every person they locate out of their shelter is one more room that we have, one more bed we have at Day by Day. To me, the payback on that was very significant. So there was that. Covey, I think that the folks from Covey did a better job of explaining it, so I won't even go at that. But it's that underrepresented population was specifically mentioned by the DEI committee. Don't forget about developmentally disabled members of our community. And I've actually heard from parents whose children go there as part of their respite house. So that was very much appreciated. We've already talked about Habitat, Jericho Road. While we have multiple food pantries in the community, Jericho Road is probably one of the 3 largest, and their equipment is starting to fade. So it was all about equipping them for all the foodstuffs that they distribute. Lakeside Packaging, they already spoke. I don't think I need to go any more into that one, except mention DEI committee did mention that. Operation Dream North, it is an area that I think is we can do more of to reach the youth of our community. And I like the fact that they're working with, but they are not affiliated with the Boys and Girls Club, but they want to do a Saturday program. And we currently don't have that type of program in our community, and it's about targeting youth. And I know Councilmember Esslinger said that's one of his. That wasn't specifically on the list, but it was serving underserved populations, which was on the list. So if it clicks off some other things, that's great, but it hit very hard at youth and youth of color, and so I thought that was important. Similarly, the Oshkosh Area School District, their program is really supplementing what World Relief does, and World Relief should be getting more funding from the federal government. I've just given you a little personal opinion tonight. I think World Relief is getting shortchanged by the federal government. I have talked to Congressman Grothman about that. I think Oshkosh bears a large burden of the refugee community, and I think that the feds ought to be doing a better job. But we still have people that are residents of our community who just happen to be refugees previously, and after the 90 days is done, they're cut off from other support. Despite my opinion, we still need to serve residents of our community. So part of what the school district's doing, part of what SEPO's doing, part of the, I think both of those, and the Literacy Council, all 3 of those groups are addressing issues with our refugee community over and above World Relief. Already talked about Farmington, Salvation Army. They provide daytime services to our homeless community, and their equipment's fading, and they are raising half the money themselves to do that. SEPO, again, I talked about that with our refugee community. SEPO does an outstanding job of reaching out to everybody. To somebody's point earlier that you know, this one's getting funded for occupancy. What we did was everybody who got cut there, who was asking for occupancy, got cut down to 30,000 because they provided me information about the range of places available in town. At 30,000 seemed to be more on the low end, so consistently I cut it back so that 30,000 was what they got. Corridor, Commonwealth Development, that's the group that's going to be doing second shift daycare. That is virtually non-existent in our community. And it's a project that we are supporting, but we don't have the funds to help them with their second shift daycare. We gave them TIF support to go vertical with the building, but they're getting that second shift daycare. Childcare was listed. It was really interesting, and I think council heard this during the retreat, and some of you weren't on the council yet, but our focus group of people in the community said, we got to address childcare. That was a big issue that was raised. And when the rest of the council heard it, they're like, yeah, that's something that hadn't been in our strategic plan. It was just one of those emerging issues. And I think to the mayor's point, there were things that have gotten worse after COVID. And I had written a memo to council saying, I don't think you should fund this whole thing right away. So that's kind of your point, Councilmember Nichols. And I use the term, keep our powder dry. I'm glad we waited, because I don't think we would, these needs would still be there, and yet we would, if we had doled out all the money, we would have been empty-handed to help them. So I feel good about that, and I feel that Commonwealth is a good project. And the Learning Collaborative is another group of people that are serving underserved populations, a variety of different groups. And even though Mr. Hess is here, he didn't speak in favor of it. He talked about another one, but he sold himself short about it. But oh, Leah, I'm sorry. Thanks, you're here. I think it was hitting a population that we're underserving, and then the Literacy Council I already mentioned.
So
that's kind of it.
I want to thank you for all that. Looking at what the original council set out in their priorities and what you've presented here, I think it very much fits in with what the original council set out and instructed you to do. Do I agree with all of these? No, but I think specifically in terms of housing and some of the other ones here, we really are making that impact forward for something that's lasting in the community. So thank you. I appreciate it, and that's all I got.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Sure. So I'm gonna maybe throw out a few questions, changes. I do really like, thank you for explaining the workforce housing stuff. I do really like both of those projects. I don't know if I want to, personally, I don't know if I want to fund the city at the full amount. I do think that maybe we should go to that 300,000 level and, I don't know, split the difference between both projects, or just let you do the Washington School one. I did want to bring up, this whole thing kind of started because we got two of the people in the room that it started because of the bid, and it started because of Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods. At the time, I supported both those applications. I still do. I would like to, I guess, hear everyone's thoughts on funding those organizations. I know the bid is maybe a little bit more of an amenity to the downtown, starting that new nonprofit organization, getting that new person. Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods, I do think the city has traditionally funded them. The city has been one of their biggest funders, and it's been really their livelihood. I think we're looking at maybe not having an Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods if we don't help in some way on that end. Lynn cut me off if I stray into territory that isn't part of this discussion, but I guess if it's not part of this application, this is going to be, I think, budget time discussions as well. So I'd like to hear people's opinions on specifically, I guess, the city funding, and then as it relates to both the bid and Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods.
I can go a little bit if you, I'll go, what the heck. I like both of the housing projects, and I'm fine with the dollar amounts, but if we need to find additional funding from another source to make sure that those both happen, that I'd be comfortable with that. From my own, we have undesignated fund balance that could be used if we'd like to, potentially for some of this, for specifically that. like the Farmington Workforce Housing or the Habitat one. I would not be recommending that for any other of the grants requested that go out to different organizations. I'd be saying that because the city's involved in those intimately, and those would be appropriate use of funds. If we didn't have this pot of money here, you know, we might be talking about that. So that would be appropriate, I think, for that. Healthy neighborhoods. I think Councilmember Stevens is right. We're at a tipping point with healthy neighborhoods. I understand city staff and city hall would like healthy neighborhoods to be more self-sufficient. I think that's a nice way to put it. I think healthy neighborhoods in that organization, GoHNI, does a lot of stuff that city hall can't do or doesn't have the capacity to do and wouldn't do it for that cost. So if we lose GoHNI, that also sets back a large part of our community in terms of how engaged we are and our connectedness within our neighborhoods. And our connectedness in our neighborhoods was what got a lot of people through COVID. So it would be appropriate to use, in my mind, some ARPA money to support that endeavor, to make sure that that organization keeps achieving their purpose. But it's a tough one. It's not easy. So those are my thoughts on those two, at least to those questions. Councilman Larson, go
I
ahead.
can go a little bit. I'd be the natural fit to speak about the bid because I'm a bid board member. Councilman Stevenson, to your point, I don't know how to start with this one because I watched it happen the last time the bid application came before this council. It was identical. It failed. I still don't know why it failed at that point. It didn't get brought back. It could have been brought back. It could have been done a million different ways. And now we're back to a different thing addressing the same thing, and it's not recommended where it was recommended the first time. So I would love to speak on it, but I honestly don't even know where to begin speaking on it because it's frustrating to me personally because I was on the outside advocating for it to be there. It got recommended by city staff. It was shut down entirely by council. And that's how we got to where we are right now, is from that exact instance. So some of you up here can speak to what happened. I mean, not that we need to get into what happened in the past because it doesn't help going forward necessarily, but it was the exact same scenario tonight that application was recommended, brought before you. It hasn't changed. I don't think one word of it has changed, and now is no longer recommended and essentially not in consideration, which is hard. And I don't know how to go back from Jessie being told no in an email that she's not recommended to removing some things here. It's also not on the agenda, to your point, to the city attorney, because I don't know that we can discuss it because it's not on the agenda currently, which makes it hard to know what to do now and hard to do it at the meeting in July.
Every application is on the agenda.
Okay, good. That was,
Yeah.
I was unclear about that, and I
No,
phrased
that-
my question really poorly before, because it says we're only to discuss recommended items.
The ARPA grant process and
Everything's fair game.
the 51 and the 2.3,
Okay.
2.4 million is in front of us.
Then I read way too heavily into the words in the agenda that says we are to discuss the recommended items. But that's the end of this sentence. But that's fine. I still can answer your question because I don't know where to begin with your question. But I agree with your premise for sure. I just don't know how to help.
Sure.
That's a good way to put it. Some are recommended for funding, some are recommended not for funding. Those are the
they're all
recommendations.
recommended.
I read it
They're all
I read it as a
recommendations.
layman would. If you're recommended, it's a
That's
yes.
okay.
And if you're not recommended, it's a yeah.
No, that's
just saying.
Fair question, but yeah, I had fully expected all 51 to be on the table.
I know I've spoken a few times, but to Councilmember Stevenson's question, for the bid, yes, absolutely yes. And then for GoHNI, I would like it to be a part of a larger discussion about the long-term liquidity of GoHNI. I know that a lot of us have some consternation about that. So instead of that being a Band-Aid fix, if that could be something to make sure that HNI is set up for a healthy future, I'd love to entertain the conversation.
And if I can maybe chime in a little bit, when we had the application, this was past council when we were talking about this during our budget session, and then when it subsequently got recommended for an ARPA application the first time around, the idea about giving them this kind of lump sum of money was to kind of like put them on their own, was the idea. So traditionally we've given them X amount of dollars every year out of, I think it's out of housing funds, if I'm correct. Maybe we've done some general levy at times, but anyway, the idea behind giving them this kind of lump sum was here's X amount of dollars to operate for the next few years. In the next few years, try to start getting your own fundraising, which I think they have started right now as well. So to answer your question, I think that's what our intent was, if Carl or Matt remember that as well.
Very good.
Councilmember Larson kind of brought up a question there. There was a few of us who were on council at the time when the bid requests got, we told the bid to put in an application and get it before us. We did that at budget, and it was clear from the televised budget hearing that there was good direction on that, and then something happened at that meeting. I don't know what happened, and I did not enjoy that night and did not enjoy that process of how that unfolded. It is a worthy recipient, and I'd like to see it funded in some way as well, Councilmember Larson. I just, at the moment, don't know how to do it.
I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to make suggestions on this, right, and figure out what happens the next time. I'm a little nervous that the next meeting becomes this meeting, because we just talked about inviting everybody back who wasn't here tonight for the next one. But I don't know how that helps this process get passed along. I think we're all, and not to interrupt you, I'm sorry,
No.
but I think we're all sort of saying, and I'm not gonna put words in anybody's mouths here, but Farmington and Washington Elementary, I think we all like. I love it very much. I would love to find a way to fund those no matter what happens, and I think that's within our purview going forward. I agree with Councilman Stevenson that both H&I and BID are worthy recipients also. Conveniently, they're the same amounts of money.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is I view this very similarly, and for the new council members, get used to this, because towards the end of the budget process, the regular budget process, there's a meeting before you finally approve it, and you start getting into details. I want to do this or that to the budget. I'm fully expecting, if council members make those motions, that's what I'm expecting tonight. And so if the council says we'd like to move it from A to B, that is entirely council's prerogative, and our job is to take notes, answer questions, but ultimately it goes there. I was the chair of the United Way allocations committee for 2 years. I was a member for 6. It's not easy. So, but ultimately, I also had to go to the board, and I was also on the board, and we had to make some very difficult decisions. And ultimately, you got to do that. So, it's your turn to tell us what you like and don't like, and it's okay to disagree with my recommendations. You know, we debated this a lot in staff. So, you're struggling with it. I don't want to say good luck to you, but at the same time, this is your time.
Go ahead, and then I'll make a suggestion based upon Councilmember Larson's recent comments.
So just had a question for you. What's your plan Z? Because like some of these have fundraising requirements that they need to get done, and if that doesn't get met, what is the backup plan?
The idea would be that we're going to give them some deadlines of like November 1st for fundraising, because we need to, and the reason Ms. Kalmus is here is because she's been following the rules and regulations regarding ARPA. So we'll have 2 months to make any reallocations if people can't make that requirement. If, now there might be some other ones that you say, gosh, I really had to choose between A and B doesn't get funded, and you might say, well, can we allocate it to B? The answer will be yes. It'd be preferable to do it sooner rather than later. We got to make sure that B is ready, still has the capacity to do it. My plan Z is more along the lines of, if you can't make a decision on one of these, we have infrastructure projects. And if you fund infrastructure at 77% instead of 75%, that's not going to bother either of us. So that'll be your call. But I think we're going to have a hard deadline of like November 1st, so that it's Fisher cut bake time for these groups.
To the mayor's point, we have a safety valve to make sure none of this money gets left on the table.
Exactly. Mayor and I have had multiple discussions, so I've been anticipating that question. And I think in the reasons to recommend, we have some of those things. I'm looking at the one, Learning Cooperative just happens to be one. They talk about raising $95,000. You know, that'll be something that we'll need to get, so we know that they can not only make the match, but they can make the match so they can spend our money too, because we don't want them saying on January 1st, sorry, we weren't able to raise the money, here's the money back, and then they feel good. I'll feel terrible. I want them to be able to say they're going to spend it, they spend it, and they get their allocation.
In terms of the remaining items that were suggested. I've been clicking all over the place here on my laptop. I'm going to ask a hard question, but is there anything that any council member basically wants to go on record to say that they want it pulled, so we can have that discussion first?
I do.
Councilmember Bressler, go right ahead.
Oshkosh Area School District.
And I'll be honest, I struggle with it. If you don't mind me just commenting on it too real quick, I guess I should ask you why. I guess we should do that probably.
Sure. I mean, they just passed a $100 and some million referendum. It's my understanding that maybe this April and next April there's going to be another referendum north of $200 million. They're buying up property around South Park at the clip of $200,000 to $250,000 a piece. They've done that 3 or 4 times. So while the cause may be good, I can't see giving money to foolish spending that they do. And I mean, just buy one less house, and they're buying up these houses under the hope that the referendum's going to pass. So nobody in their right mind with their money would do something like that. So maybe buy one less house next year, and then you'd have the money to fund it. So that's my thoughts on the school district.
I know I struggled with the government entity thing. I think it kind of got brought up a little earlier. I agree with why. City manager, your synopsis about supporting that part of our population, the refugees, it's important. But I struggle with OASD being the pass-through to receive that. I don't know if I struggle enough to remove it, but I struggle with that. That was one of my 2 or 3 that, like, I don't know that we should do that. So I don't know what other council members want to. Yeah, Councilmember Sloan, go
I'd
ahead.
say I'm sitting in the exact same boat that you are, Mayor. With that, for me, in other government entities and seeing that the school district has more flexibility in terms of its financing than we do as a city. And so for me, is it enough that I would want to pull it? I'm not sure I'm quite there yet, but it is something that I do struggle with. If you force me to name 2 or 3 that I struggled with, that would be one of them.
Good. Any other comments anybody wants to share on that one?
I agree. That was the one that really jumped out to me first because they have other mechanisms of funding. And like everybody said, it's an amazing program and I want it to be funded. If we have to cut 77 out of it, that would be the first cut.
If we're going to procedurally make a decision, I think that is in line with not funding governmental entities, and that it's a sensible policy to move forward with.
Yeah, go ahead.
I also think, and I'm going to expand the scope a little bit of what we're talking about, but if we could prioritize, we talk about the relief valve, and so it's very possible in November we have a bunch of money that we have to spend. I would prefer we prioritize these government entities at that point. That includes both City of Oshkosh applications as well as the OASD, because there were other ARPA funds available to do those things to these governments in 21.
I like that thought process because you know that the government's going to spend it essentially.
Correct.
It's a very quick turnaround. Yeah, I guess for the Oshkosh Area School District 1 and keep consistency, if we were looking at getting rid of our housing applications, I think that they should be removed as well. If there's maybe another, like is there 12 of these? I can't remember how many there are. But if there was like a number 13 that you guys were recommending that would fits in that $70,000, maybe bring that in.
Anybody want to expand on that one as well? That he's talking about removing both 300,000s for the Habitat partnership as well as the Farmington app. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think my original was saying that I'd be okay with the Washington one, but I mean, if we truly do have other funding sources we can tap, I would like to remove governmental entities and then look at funding the bid and then HNI.
Wrestlinger, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm completely in favor, and that's one of the ones I had that I agree with the city manager, is the Habitat for Humanity, for many reasons. Number one, we're involved with another fantastic group, and we're taking a building that could have been a blight sitting there for years, and we're going to put it to very, very good use, that property to very good use, and we're gonna be putting it on the tax rolls, which helps us out. So to me, that one's a no-brainer. And I do understand that it's a government money is going to a government, but it's, if we don't, then we're gonna have to fund it some other way, so you're just going to the taxpayer for more money. So I don't know, to me, it just makes sense to use this money for that.
Yeah.
Specifically for the Washington School property, I know we're talking about not doing government to government, I get that, but I want to see that project go forward, and if this is, obviously there's other places to fund it, but it's going to come from taxes, and I'd rather use this federal money for that. The Farmington House, if I have to cut one of them, I'm going to cut it. I would be more in support of cutting the Farmington project, but the Habitat one I really want to see move forward.
Go ahead.
I know that we've been talking about housing, but if you force me to choose one housing project, I would go for the Habitat one in Washington. Seeing that I do think we need to be logically consistent, that is something that I think is going to be important. So I really do like the Farmington project, but if we're saying that we're going to take government to government transfers out of it in whole, at least for now, then we have to be consistent across the board. So I understand that, you know, if we do cut the Habitat program, then we're going to have to find a way to make that project happen, and I would much rather use ARPA dollars and levy dollars for that. So I would like to keep the Habitat program, and if I had to cut a housing program, it would be the Farmington one.
I'm seeing almost all head nods on that. So at the moment, that, and tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong, leave Habitat funded with ARPA, pull ARPA funding for the Farmington and find it elsewhere, is the, roughly?
I agree with that. I think, and this is my fault because I added that, but I think we were also talking about the school district, and I think we were removing funding there is where I saw heads nodding.
Yep. Oh, no, I also
Okay,
nodded, sorry, I shouldn't have, I didn't confirm that one, I should
Sorry,
have.
yep.
But it was also, I think there was 7 heads
Yeah,
shaken to remove OASD funding under that request.
OASD in Farmington
Yes.
is what I've heard
So far, okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, I can't speak explicitly to what HNI might need for funding. I know what the bid ask was, because obviously I was part of that process, but that reads to me like we have 375 remaining then if we're gonna remove those 2. And then there's a way to allocate to those 2 that might be sensible. It's not the full ask of either, but that might be a path towards at least getting towards the end of this process.
Your math is roughly correct. The H&I and bid were both equal at 300.
Yes.
Okay, so just. Any interest in, I'm just gonna straight up ask, as he just mentioned, there's 377.5 that's now on the table, at least open. Is Go H&I and the bid where this council would like city manager to put those dollars?
I'd be the first to say yes.
We got one, yes.
I like the idea, but I'd also like to hear from each of them. I don't know if we can call them up, but if those, if that dollar amount can, I guess, get the job done is kind of what I'm.
Like roughly halvesies, basically you're saying?
Yeah, because they each wanted 300. If they each get half, are they going to be able to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish? I guess I don't want to give them money if they can't accomplish the goal.
I know we do have representatives from both. It's council's prerogative to invite up when needed. Councilmember Stevens would like one, if you guys are interested in coming up and chatting to us, Ms. Meidel.
Sure.
If you would,
Go to that
yeah,
one?
if you wouldn't mind, at least chatting about what you're hearing from us right now. If we were able to do a funding of half of your request at this time, using ARPA funds, you know, what does that do? I guess, how does that help you? Does it put you in a different spot?
Yeah, so I guess I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Obviously, any funding would help support us and bring us to the next level. We essentially do have an idea of what we could do to sustain ourselves, and that would be mostly adding events. That's one of our biggest fundraisers is ticketed events and things like that, that also draw people to our retail businesses downtown. So I guess I don't know if I can answer that question right here, right now. We're in the process of working on a business plan to figure out sort of timelines and what that might look like. I think that could get us to the next level for sure, but I can't say yes or no if
That's fair.
right here at this moment.
That's fair. We'd much rather have an honest answer than you tell us yes and it actually is a no, so.
For those that don't know me, I'm Tom Foydick, and I'm the Executive Director of Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods. We would be thrilled with whatever we get. I think the way we've looked at it is that there's 3 different scenarios our board's looking at is full funding, no funding, and some vast area in between. And I think it's more a question of not that we stop doing what we're doing, but it might modify how we do what we do. And half would be okay. But I have to point out, I know other people spoke to getting a letter. I never got a letter, so I have no idea what our recommendation was. I don't know where we were on any list, so I never got a letter. Okay. But to answer your question, Mayor, 150, that would be a big asset to us.
Okay.
We would make that work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I know this is awkward tonight for those who are here. We knew it would be. I appreciate your guys' willingness to just step up and ask a very direct question.
So I guess with that, yeah, I support it in concept. Maybe if we can just talk with them a little bit more on how that looks.
Cities.
Yeah.
And this is this area. We don't have to basically say, it's 150 and 150. It can also be, you're hearing our direction on this. I think in this particular case, it's find a way to try to get both of those on there using the funding we just opened up for you.
Yeah. Well, each of their requests were for 300,000, so I think it would be,
Yeah.
at least at this point, I would come back with half for each group because they were very comparable type of requests.
Would also be completely within the realm that you'd be going back and having a conversation based upon what you're hearing right now and talking to both of them offline, of course, and you could come back with it could be a different number, but finding a way to fit them in is, I think, the direction that I'm seeing several heads nodding in agreement on.
Okay.
Is there any, Councilman Russell, go right
Thank
ahead.
you, Mayor. Just a couple suggestions here. Again, I mean, I've got a bunch here, but 2 that were very high on my list was Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I know a few people that have been associated with those programs, and I think those are absolutely wonderful programs. They can, turn some kids' lives around, which many need to be turned around. And that's 103-093. And the other one I have here is for the Friends of the Senior Center to help seniors with technology, getting to understand it a little better. And that's 65,990. And that goes along with the children, the veterans, and the senior citizens. So if we can fit those in there somewhere along the line, I think those are certainly good programs to consider.
Any other specific ones that are on the approved list that council wants to talk about not being on the approved list? Or recommended list, I should say. Again, I think I try really hard not to speak for all 7 of us, but I think all 7 of us, there are things that we would like to see in this list that are not there. There's things on this list that we would all like to see not on there. But I don't know that we're ever going to get consensus on 100%. But in general, the objectives are being achieved that this council and past councils have laid out for you in terms of, how we want some of these dollars spent and allocated in the community. Anything else you guys want to talk about on? Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't on a remove one. This is what I'd like to see funded at some level. It doesn't need to be 100% or even 25%, but funding Oshkosh Pride in some way, the Hope Fringe project with Oshkosh Pride, I think is important to send a message as the city, and if it's something where we can't get their whole sound system, or maybe it's something where we can get they ask for security radios, they ask for some other things, very specific operational things that one that I'd like to see on the list of recipients at some level.
And then, City Manager, I have a clarifying question for you, or I have a question I'd like you to clarify for me. So World Relief had made a request themselves also. It's number 50
Yes.
on the list. They'd asked for 150 and some change, part operating, part capital. We talked about Oshkosh Area School District's request was basically as a pass-through for supporting some of their programming. Their requests weren't for the same thing. It was for something, it was touching on different things, right?
Yeah, with respect to World Relief, theirs was for employment skills training for refugees.
Okay.
The school is still focused on students,
Sure.
so.
And I was just wondering, with the funds we opened up, if for example, OH9 bid each got 150, it still could leave 70,000 some change, the 77.5 that we moved from the school, took away from the school district request. Is that something you'd be in favor of supporting, or is there something else potentially, or would you be more inclined to?
I think
I'm just asking.
I think the council's at a point where I'm very comfortable with council giving me direction on which areas they want to do.
Okay.
You're in your element, you're doing a good job, this is what you do, and I respect that.
Okay.
Since we're talking openly, on that 77.5 that we have in the bank, personally, I'd like to see that go 60 to the Hooper and 17.5 to the Prime.
Could you say that again? I just want to make sure.
Oh, you go.
I know it's yours, but.
Yeah, 60 Hooper, 17.5 to the Pride / Hope Frid /
Number 23.
Okay.
number 23.
Thank you.
I think I'm right on that, right? Yeah, Hope for Open Collective Foundation?
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the dollar amount?
60,000 for the Hooper one, which is number, if somebody finds it before me, let me know.
22.
Thank you. And then 17.5 to number 23 was what he was
My suggestion.
suggesting. Any other council members have some thoughts?
I agree. Sorry, I just jumped in without saying
No,
my name
you're good.
first, but
You're good.
I agree with that. I'm hesitating because I'm a gay guy talking about Pride in June at this meeting. But I guess I just wanted. This is an organization. It's led by someone that they put everything that they are into their organization. It's certainly a group that is quieter in Oshkosh than I think it has to be, and I'm talking about it in the third person, but we are quieter than I've seen in other places. And so I think supporting this organization is a powerful stance by this council to tell people that you belong here, and we're going to make sure that you feel like you belong here too. So, Carl, I appreciate you bringing them up.
Any other thoughts? I'd be fine with that suggestion. Using up the remaining, that 77.5 in that sense. Okay, is there anything else that council wants to discuss on the specific ones that are in front of us? Have to remove to add, so. See nothing. Speak now or hold your peace until the next meeting. Okay.
I guess I have a final, sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
I was gonna say I have a final comment, but you're probably gonna be talking. I have a final comment, just thank you, council members, for going through this. This is what I wanted to see in this workshop, was us to kind of dig into these things and take suggestions and things like that, so thank you, everyone.
You're welcome, Joe. And I guess my question is just procedural. Will city staff prepare, I guess, an updated list of recommendations prior to next month?
You're warming us up for budget season, council, so
Great.
I appreciate it. I just want to make sure I'm hearing it okay. What I'm hearing is 300 for combination Go H&I bid, 60 for Hooper, 17.5 for Hope Ridge / Open Collective Foundation. Did I hear correctly?
That's what I have.
I'm counting 4 nods. I see 4 nods. What we will do then is we will develop a resolution, which is subject to amendment and change. Everybody's got that, that ability, but we will do that with this in mind and give this to you for consideration, and then you can amend. And this is exactly what we do with the budget process, so you got your prerogative in 2 weeks as well.
Can I make one additional suggestion? I would like, it's really city manager roll-off, but I'd like your office to send out a follow-up letter or an email, whatever communication form you want to use, to all applicants, and let them know of what unfolded tonight, and that council did make some changes to the recommendations you made, and that those will be before us at the next council meeting, and it's on the agenda. They are welcome to be here, and they should be encouraged to be here. As Councilmember Bulow said, you know, they have an opportunities in front of them to defend their request or to advocate for their request, and I think that would be appropriate that one more communication goes out in whatever method you see fit.
We'll get a letter out as soon as possible. I think what I'm hearing is just be more general. We can give them the attachment, and I think what I'm gonna do is the attachment that you got this evening with the memo, we'll just update it with the recommended amount. It's now in council's purview to do, and we'll take care of that. And you may get a whole new set of calls or emails, but I think you know what you're doing. I think what I was anticipating based on what Councilmember Stevenson said, I appreciate that. Councilmember Flum, I haven't heard everything you said tonight, but you did say you aren't going to be available on the 9th, correct?
No, I won't be present.
Okay, just
I'll be out of the country.
So it probably is very helpful that you have this discussion tonight, because only 3 nods doesn't help me.
And I guess I have one more question while we're talking about the resolution, and it might make sense to add it in that resolution, and so that's, I guess, a question, not a statement. We had talked about the relief valve being those housing units or potentially the school district, just those government entities, because like Joe said, we know government's going to spend money. If we can resolve that now, while 7 of us agree on that, that might be a positive before we get to the holidays when we're talking about how to spend that money then.
So give you that, council, giving us direction that you officially have that as your out.
I really like that.
You like that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
That's fine, because if it's not that, it needs to come back to the city coffers, so.
I think the most pleased person with that suggestion is Ms. Coleman. Despite her name, this is not making her calm at all. So we will do that. I
I've only
appreciate
seen her
that
eyes go a
feedback.
little wide a couple of times.
It's getting a little nervous, so yeah.
And
Okay.
I appreciate that ad.
Yeah.
It's making sure that it's already decided. I like that. Okay. If there's nothing else on this one, we'll move to the next agenda topic. Hold on, I gotta find it. Future agenda items. Discussion of agenda process will be on the July 9th meeting. I think this was a request from a couple of council members wanting to discuss current process and any potentials for upgrades to it.
Yeah, so what I did, I included in your packet, encourage you to look at it with the current sort of scheduled deadline that we currently use. I just wanted to give you some perspective, not one way or the other. We'll talk about that on the 9th, but I wanted to at least get you started.
Okay. Presentation of truck route study. This is from KL Engineering, July 23rd meeting. And we will also, Councilmember Flom did mention he'll not be here the 9th. Councilmembers Nichols and Larson also not here the 23rd, correct?
Yep.
Just want to make sure. You'll have that information in advance anyways via email.
I will probably not until the 23rd.
It's also possible Councilmember Stevenson won't be, so if either of the 3 to my right aren't going to be here, you got to make sure you let us know in advance.
We'll be here.
Okay. No getting sick that night. On to the next, Bowman Street reconstruction, AECom. This is a date to be determined. I don't know what this one's about.
Mr. Robbie, if you could.
Yes, at the, wow. Got a little too close to that. At the June Transportation Committee meeting, there was a presentation by AECom regarding some reconstruction, cross-section details for a section of Bowen Street, which is being reconstructed from Otter Avenue to Parkway Avenue. It's being reconstructed through one of the DOT programs, the Surface Transportation Block Grant Urban Program. So just looking to get some guidance and direction. We got some guidance from the Transportation Committee. The one reason that it wasn't brought to you this evening for discussion and presentation was we're waiting to get a little bit more information from our Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is East Central Wisconsin Regional Plan Commission. So there have been some discussions with DOT about the various alternatives, and they've had some thoughts that might impact the MPO. So we're working with the Executive Director, Melissa Kramer-Badke, to get that sorted out. So we're hoping to have a presentation to you hopefully in July.
All right.
So as a point of comparison, it's kind of similar to the discussion back in 2018 on Oregon Street. You know, what cross section do we want to rebuild this area in? So I think you were a part of that discussion back then, correct, Mayor?
I think
Or was that right before you were on council?
I was right about that time. I don't
Okay.
remember, but I know what you're talking about.
So that's what that one's about.
Okay. There's no questions on that. Future workshop, underground utilities, still date to be determined.
Mr. Robbie and his staff had a meeting with the other utilities just today, so we're making progress.
Okay, so soon.
Yeah, we had, as city manager had pointed out, we had met with Wisconsin Public Service, We Energies, a month and a half ago. We had some additional meetings today. We're gonna start taking all that information that we've gotten from them and getting it together into a presentation, and just gotta start digesting everything that we've gotten to them and figure out how to present it to you. So that's why it's kind of undetermined as the date yet.
Sounds good. Council member announcements and statements. Any announcements or statements from council members? July 4th, fireworks down in Menominee Park.
And
Oh, that's actually, you know what? I don't want to, I forgot it was further down. I'll take that back.
That's okay.
Strike that from the record. We don't want to take that away from city manager, so. Any announcements at all? Nope. City manager, the rest is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First thing, I want to thank the staff for scrambling to get the logistics for this meeting done tonight. It was very difficult. Of course, the elevator was fixed this morning, but we needed to be transparent about where the meeting was going to be. So I know Jake and his staff did an outstanding job, so
like the
really
temperature
appreciate
of this
that.
meeting.
Yeah, can we get this air conditioning?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that is a definite positive.
If there was an ARPA funding application for air conditioning, that would have been right on.
We have 2 cooperative purchases that are in your packet tonight for police and fire departments. And then a Festival Foods fireworks show. The mayor didn't take my thunder, but the event is still scheduled with a rain date of July 5th. The recent rain has slowed down the progress on the road, but we're very confident that we'll be ready for the 4th of July. So I thought it was going to be this week, and last night that just threw another day off. So they're working on it. Mr. Mauer feels that July 2nd we'll probably be able to put out the word and everything. So stay tuned, but I feel confident Pratt Trail will be open for the 4th of July.
Before you move on to the next one, though, the reason that we want Pratt Trail open, we've got, dozen and a half, 2 dozen food trucks, right, coming into the park, helping support the fireworks in the evening of hopefully it'll be loud fun, but some fun in the park, down in Menominee Park.
Wonderful commercial message. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're excited about all the very family-friendly event, and it'll be fun. And then I have the status of outstanding issues. Mr. Collins had forwarded you where the scope has been growing with the parking study, very appropriate. So they're working on that. Mentioned the the underground utilities and ARPA. We talked a lot about, and the sanitary district negotiations and mediation scheduled for Thursday. We'll keep you posted.
I know I appreciated the update from Director Collins just in terms of the issue on the parking. It's multifaceted. There's some depth there, and it's not just one singular issue. So appreciated the update from him and how you guys are going to move forward on that one. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.